Welcome, everybody, to our second Saturday poetry reading hosted by Kathy Donnelly. My name is Dan Kerr, and I have the privilege of being your moderator for this session. We start fairly promptly about 11 o'clock. If you would like to read, and we do have the open read, please put your name in chat, and we'll call upon folks, always starting with Marvin. But we start with Marvin, and then we call on folks in the order that they put their name in chat, so please be mindful of that. Our feedback, please keep your microphone muted out of respect for the other poets. The background noise is quite, you'd be amazed at how much the background noise interferes with the quality of the audio. So please keep your microphone muted. And if you accidentally put your microphone on, I'm going to turn it off on you as best I can because it's quite distraction. Feedback is a gift. So there is the email. So danielbkerr@verizon.net. Kathy and I will be meeting on this Tuesday morning to kind of take a look at this, what we've been doing. And so any feedback that you have is quite timely because Kathy and I are going to meet with this specific reason to look at feedback we've received in the past and some ideas we have. Although we've been doing this for 4 years and we've got a formula that we think works, we know that we can still make it better with your input. And feedback is a gift. We do begin with, after I'll get you settled, a couple of announcements I'll make and welcome you here, and then I'll turn it over to Kathy. Kathy will read a poem and then introduce today's featured poet. Northport is very well represented today by Bruce Johnson. So we have Bruce, and then we'll do the open read. We'll bring Bruce back for an encore, and then Kathy will announce the poet that we have in February. And I believe that Jerry is with us, which is great to have the next poet with us during this current session. This is one of many outreach programs of All Souls Church. I am mindful of the fact that you are here for poetry, not for evangelization. But I will mention to you 3 of our monthly outreach programs that the poets do participate in and do contribute to. So on March 8th, we have our Saturdays at 6 concert. We've got a duo coming in doing music from Spain. So that'll be on March 8th. So we do the concerts, Saturdays at 6 concerts once a month. The next one we have is March 8th. We do the poetry every month. That's back in the days before COVID when we did it in the church. You'll recognize all the poets there. We've been in the virtual mode ever since COVID hit, and we're likely to stay in that for various reasons. We also do Native American drumming the 4th Thursday of each month. So you're welcome to join us for that. I see Linda Dickman has just joined us as well. So we have even more representation from Northport. So if you want more information on those, just visit our website or just send me an email and I'd be happy to give you more information on that. Once a year, what we do is we combine our concert series with our Native American drumming with our poetry, and we do a very special concert called Conversations of the Sacred. This was the brainchild of Carmen Bugan before she relocated to Minnesota. She passed the baton now to Carolyn Emberson. What we do at that concert is we have sacred readings from various religious traditions. Each sacred reading is then followed by a musical interlude, either from our organist Dan Kinney, or from musicians from the university, or from our Native American drummer. And the date has been set for that. It is September 6th. If you'd like to be one of the readers, you look in the second picture over there, you'll recognize many of the poets in the front row. You'll see Bruce, you'll see Kathy, you'll see Carolyn, you'll see several of the poets that you recognize. If you just send me a note, and we'd be happy to have you be one of the readers that day. So that's September 6th. And then also once a year rather, we do our annual All Souls 5K race and 2K walk. We're going in, believe it or not, our 17th year of doing this. And what we do is we celebrate the role of the church in the community, all the different ways we try to serve the community. And what we also do is we raise funds to make the church accessible. Those of you who remember when we used to meet in the church knows that there are heavy steps that you have to walk up. You know, when Stanford White designed the church and was opened in 1896, life expectancy in the US was less than 50 years. So many of us wouldn't have made the cut back then. Handicapped accessibility wasn't on his mind. And also the church doesn't have a bathroom, so we have to send people down the schnitzels. So project has been conceived now. We just had our annual meeting where we went through the latest recommendation from the architect. So we are making progress on this. So this annual 5K race, 2K walk does two things. It celebrates the role of what we do in the community, and it also raises funds to make the church accessible to all. And this was a tradition that was started by a number of years ago by Kathy and by a woman, name escapes me for the time being, but the two poets started this. And every year we have a group of poets that walks called the Live Poets Society. And you'll recognize Rabbi Fisher and Bruce and Kathy and Richard there as well. So please mark your calendars for that. We'd love to have and one of these days we're going to get one of the poets is going to run. So far they're all walkers, but we would welcome poets who want to run as well. So on behalf of the folks at All Souls, it's my privilege to welcome you here. Now we'll turn it over to Kathy. Kathy, over to you.
So the woman who helped me started in the beginning was Gladys Henderson. And Gladys Henderson was not only a member of the church, but the Episcopalian church, but she was also a nun in the convent at one point in the city. So she made an appeal and we were welcomed. Now, All Souls doors were open to anyone from 7 a.m. to whenever they closed it at 7 p.m. So slipping in and doing a little poetry reading for 2 hours seemed like it would be acceptable. And then it was. So that's how it all started. We were at a winery, but the winery expected us to spend a great deal of money there. Poets weren't into doing that. So we were invited to do it only off season. And of course, we wanted it all year round. So that's a little story from the beginning. So I like to start with a poem, and I've chosen a poem called Mediterranean Blue. It's by Naomi Shihab Nye, and fabulous poet. And this is what she writes: Mediterranean Blue. If you are the child of a refugee, you do not sleep easily when they are crossing the sea on small rafts, and you know they can't swim. My father couldn't swim either. He swam through sorrow, though, and made it to the other side on a ship, pitching his old clothes overboard at landing, then tried to be happy, make a new life. But something inside him was always paddling home, clinging to anything that floated, a story, a food, or face. They are the bravest people on earth right now. Don't dare look down on them. Each mind a universe swirling, as many details as yours, as much love for a humble place. Now the shirt is torn, the sea too, wide for comfort, and nowhere to receive a letter for a very long time. And if we can reach out a hand, we better. So that's Naomi Shihab Nye. And I thought that reading about refugees was a little appropriate for this time. I now have the great privilege of announcing Bruce Johnson, not only a great poet, one of my favorites, but also a friend, as well as Isabella. So I welcome both of them. Bruce Johnson is a lifelong resident of Long Island who currently makes his home in Northport with his wife, Isabella. He has been writing poetry since 1990 and has published a full-length volume of poetry titled Borderlands and Dreams. His poetry has also been published in the Long Island Quarterly, In Autumn, Pulmonac Transition, and the Long Islander. In 1991, he co-founded the Huntington Poets Cafe. Bruce has worked as a carpenter, banker, computer programmer, restaurant operator, owner, construction manager, and he recently retired from his job as a social services caseworker. He volunteers at the local thrift store and at the Walt Whitman Birthplace, assisting the curator there. Bruce currently serves on the board of Opera Night, Long Island. We welcome Bruce Johnson.
Here. It's quite an honor to be asked to read. And I want to thank Kathy and Dan, first of all. They're two very fine poets who spend a lot of their time making other poets shine. Can everyone hear me well? Okay.
You're fine.
My first poem is the poem that I wrote most recently. It's called Ferry in the Fog. Take the ferry from Orient to New London on a foggy summer day when the sound is quiet and the wind is less than a whisper. Buy a coffee at the counter, then climb to the top deck and walk to the stern. Visibility 90 feet, enough to see the ship's wake disappear into gray-white air. Standing near the bow, you hear the growl of the ship's engines well behind you. You feel the steady motion of steel hull through water. If dense enough, the fog will dampen your clothes and hair. Smell the salty air, taste the coffee. You might as well be in the middle of a dead calm ocean. And you have an hour to imagine where you might be going. This next poem is called Freeport, and I also wrote this recently. It came from driving by Freeport on Sunrise Highway, where I used to work. Freeport. Driving down Sunrise Highway at midnight, listening to Steely Dan. 20 again for 20 minutes. I turn off Sunrise and wend my way through vaguely familiar streets. The night air smells of the bay and the marshes that are now just a few blocks away. That hasn't changed. I cruise through the neighborhoods of 3 old girlfriends. I know for a fact that 2 of them are dead. One only a few years ago, the other gone these 50 years. The third, I like to think, is still kicking. I put the car in park, 5 decades vanish, and I'm working in a supermarket in Freeport where everybody is friends with everybody and there's a party every weekend. I let my mind wander into a backyard I once knew. No lawn really, just a few tufts of grass, lots of folding chairs, a grill hot with burning charcoals and flaring hamburger grease, 2 tubs with beer kegs, one already floating in the icy water. The party was crowded and loud, lots of drunks. Jeannie was backed up against a picnic table and Jeff was hitting on her. And why wouldn't he? He was one of those girls you want to date as soon as you set eyes on her or hear her voice. As I sidled my way into earshot, I could tell she wanted none of it. But Jeff was harmless. I guess she felt helpless because she turned to me and said, "Help." We dated for a while, a Yes concert, a few movies, a couple of parties, and 1 museum. Her parents liked me. I loved everything about her. But at the Firehouse Christmas party, she told me we should just be friends. So when she said help, I told her, "You're on your own." Jeff finally let her be. Like I said, Jeff was harmless. Bothers me sometimes, though, what I said that night. Jeannie eventually started dating a guy from a different circle. He had a speedboat. I heard about the accident the day after it happened. The boat hit a dock, and she fell headfirst into a coma. Friends gathered at the hospital. After a week, they pulled the plug. At the wake, her mother told me she's in a better place. I nodded, but I didn't believe her. I was thinking about that night at the party, thinking if I had been less selfish, more of a friend, maybe magically I could have altered fate. About a year after Jeannie died, I saw her brother and parents in the sporting goods store at the mall. We talked for a while. Her mother asked me if I was seeing anyone. I said, no, I'm on my own. 20 minutes had passed and I saw that I'd parked the car in front of Jeannie's house. Who lives here now? No light inside, just a dim street lamp down the road, not really bright enough to see anything very clearly. And this one is another poem that takes me back 50 years. It's called There and Here. In the middle of a 3 aspirin night, 50 years ago arrives, late December. We were standing by a campfire at Indian Lake, shaking and chanting our mantra, fucking cold and fucking windy. Oh, it was, despite the hot coffee, cold when we made camp, cold when we cooked on an open fire, when we ate standing and pacing, cold as we incanted. Still cold when we crawled into sleeping bags at 7 after a pull or two of whiskey. We came for deer, and come morning we geared up and marched deep into the mountain air. But I didn't know if I would shoot. You had shot before, here in these forests and there in those jungles. I don't know why we got along so well, you once knee-deep in rice and mud, and me over my head in the rhetoric of protest. But there we were, brutish allies in the cold fucking wind. I still don't know if I would have. The subject never showed. But that would have been hard choosing. Or is the act more reflex than choice? Back home from the shivering wilds, I finally checked my number, lucky. In those days, the unlucky options were Canada or jail or take the free physical. But a part of me wanted to go, the part that bought what John Wayne was selling, the part that envied the ferocity and pageantry of it, the involuntary courage, the thing greater than self, the mortal danger that defines. In the end, I let the accident of my birth date determine my fate, unmoved by a sort of patriotism born of slogan and song, and I missed my chance to have a defining moment. Though there was something of it, I suppose, in the act of letting. But it was lonely on that lake, the two of us chanting, each contemplating his choices, the ones you made there and the ones I would make here. Thank you. This is called The American Dream. Sometimes when I am only a character in childhood memory, I rest the mind's eye on the old house, or the elm trees on the walk to school, or the family around the table, and let myself think that what is possible is as boundless as a 9-year-old's dreams, and allow myself to believe, as taught, that history is a story of progress, despite the evidence. Amid these restless highways, my ambitions rose and fell to the beat of rock and roll radio and television theme music, just as surely as my father's had in the years before the Depression, before his journey across the English Channel, through the farmlands of France, and into those dark camps. And then what dreams? He returned to his small town, then a destination for white flight, a blight born of unpurged sin. And there, potato fields became 3-bedroom hopes in the same steady way that prairies became homesteads and homesteads subdivisions. Destiny manifest in strip malls and parking lots. Horace Greeley advised go west. He might have added, and treat your neighbors with respect, a thought surely not in the minds of those who from rail car windows shot buffalo by the thousands for sport, or perhaps to starve to extinction the native peoples of the plains. Big game hunting and genocide, all for the price of a train ride, and all for the purpose of whitening the vast wild land. Sometimes when I consider what we are willing to do to satisfy our dreams, I pray for insomnia. Often I daydream of a post-adolescent America, one no longer obsessed with boundless growth and wealth, one possessed of reverence, gratitude, stewardship, of desire for justice despite the cost, and I wonder what will wake us. Thank you. My wife had an experience with some squirrels, and this poem came from her description of that. This is called Good Intentions. Something in the attic was making an ungodly din, so we looked and found the clawings of a young squirrel. They're cute when they scamper across your lawn or up the trunk of an oak, but they're hell in your house. You have to get them out. He'd be better off back in nature, we thought, so we trapped him gently, drove off the grounds of the old state hospital, and set him free in a field under the 12-story shadow of an abandoned dormitory. Then we noticed the feral cats. They were many, hungry, and swift. Okay, so I'm going to lighten it up just a little bit here. This is called My Favorite Diner. The manager is watching. He wants these booths filled with well-dressed big spenders. His goal is $20 per head per hour, and here we sit in our thrift store threads deep into the after-movie rush, drinking bottomless cups of coffee, talking politics and poetry, laughing too loud. We ask the waiter for more milk. The pitcher arrives with an onion floating in it and ketchup smeared on the side. Phil and Steve develop a conspiracy theory concerning the milk, and I don't doubt them. But I defend this place for the corn muffins, toasted on the grill with butter and jam, and I quietly munch, ignoring the waiter's frown, only slightly concerned that when the money for the bill is collected, there will not be enough for a tip. And I sip my coffee, blind to the side glances of other patrons, and I think, well, that muffin hit the spot. And now I'm going to read my wife's least favorite poem. It's called What Do You Like in Your Coffee? I poured last night's leftover coffee into my mug, zapped it in the microwave, and took it along for the ride to work, sipping as I drove. While merging onto the parkway, I took a gulp. It tasted funny, furry. Something in me said, spit, just spit it out, onto the windshield, a big, dead, furry spider. Boiled to a limp mass, it stuck to the glass in a clump. I studied it as I swerved across lanes, shuddering at the thought, that thing, and the inside of my mouth. Okay. I used to teach at Suffolk Community College as an adjunct, and so I was able to observe a lot of students. This one's called the sophomore. 19 maybe, 6 feet tall, walking the corridor of the lecture hall, headphones loud enough for all to hear, jaw bouncing at the bottom of an expressionless face. With his right hand, he scratches his crotch. In his left, he holds the history of Western civilization. Okay, so that's sophomores at Suffolk. All right, the next poem is really probably the first poem I wrote after I retired. It's called My Wife. My wife is training hard on the heavy bag at the gym. Says she's getting ready for my retirement. And a more serious poem. This is a poem that I wrote perhaps 25 years ago when I first started to get to know Isabella. This is called Etude. She's a pianist, and she played a Chopin Etude for me. And when I left the house, I wrote this poem. So Etude for Isabella. I watched your hands, your swift fingers plunge into their memory as you leaned toward the keyboard, leaning as if the hollow above the soundboard drew you in. This is where the music lives, a resonant space you filled with meter and tone and method. I studied you, desiring to master this skill, to hear the notes as you heard them, as you understood them, to know you that well. Notes that fell like rain on a lake, delicate and lyrical. And after you gave me the kindest kiss, I wandered into an evening storm letting its rhythms inform me. And I heard again that opus in the stillness between rain. Okay. So I was at a diner with a friend one time, and he said out of nowhere, the last dodo died 300 years ago. And that got me thinking. So this is what I got out of that. The last dodo. The last dodo bird died 3 centuries ago. Imagine her state of mind. Did she know what her death would mean? Finding none of her own, after searching from empty nest to empty nest, maybe she settled in with the swans. Perhaps there were 2 last dodos, the one with the swans, the other wandering. Perhaps they saw each other one day from distant hilltops, each turning away in disbelief, each later dreaming of that near meeting. I believe the last dodo dreams were filled with longing. And what was her last thought, thinking as she was for her entire species? Was it, I am the last dodo, let my last breath be music? And did she then exhale a few soft notes? A song only the swans know. Thank you. I worked for 7 years, the overnight shift in a homeless shelter. And so I got to watch a lot of kids eating breakfast. This one's called, this is my wife's second least favorite poem. This is called How to Eat a Bowl of Cheerios, learned at the shelter. First, allow the milk and oats to soak in the bowl for 6 to 8 minutes while you fidget and annoy your mother. Then cram as much of the mush in your mouth as you can. A spoon is okay, but it's better to use your fingers. Chew with your mouth open so the milky pulp flows over your lower lip with each pump of your jaw. Do not lean over the table. Let the streams fall to your chest and onto the clean shirt Mom gave you for school today. Do not let her see the milky mess. Go to school that way. Give the teacher a good impression of your mom. When you get home, stuff the shirt into the drawer with your clean clothes for discovery later. Okay, these next 3 poems, if I have time, are kind of nature poems, basically. In time. On the harbor, the water is never still. Even on calm nights, lights flash in the ripples, and even the smallest ripples will rock a tethered boat. And in time, the slightest rocking will loosen the tightest line, so that a ship might drift in the moonlight, moving without direction, without intention, like the thoughts of an idle mind. Okay, and this poem is for all you hikers out there, and if you ever hiked and the weather suddenly changed, you might relate to this. Perfect moment. The weather is a sudden enemy. Freezing rain glazes frozen ground, and the trail home is becoming impassable. But to remain on the mountain shelterless in the wind is unthinkable. No time now to wonder at the fierce beauty of storm clouds through treetops. The footing of iced rocks and roots beside the steep fall of the river gorge consumes all attention. Each downhill step is a critical decision, a calculation. All powers of sense and all energies focus on the tenuous friction between rubber cleat and wet ice. There are doubts about judgment. Unspoken pleas rise in the dusky air. 1 hour to the trailhead, half an hour of daylight. No other hikers in sight. Only the sounds of the river below and a heartbeat. And this last poem is called A Walk with My Father. Day after Christmas, we walk off the turkey and pie on a broad, familiar trail. After climbing a long hill, we search for a new path that may take us to a meadow we have seen only from a distance. But it leads somewhere unexpected, and we pause at the edge of a cliff to quietly survey 1,000,000 hemlocks still in winter air. Then we descend through the evergreens to bare trees, their leaves long fallen. Beyond the geometry of converging branches lies the hint of a frozen lake, a silver-blue glare of late afternoon sun on ice. We walk across, trusting the Pennsylvania mountain winter, yet listening for a faint crack, almost hearing, almost feeling the flow of water beneath. We cannot see where it goes or where it has been. Home again, and little new has been spoken. There is love and caution in our conversation. Yet we need these walks over land that changes through the seasons into its same self. We need to place our footsteps in nearly the same places each time. We know there will be something we cannot see, something missed. We will always miss it. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Bruce. In that brief 20 minutes, you took us on a journey that included 15 poems. I can hear the wake of the ferry. I can hear the growl of the engines, and that beautiful, beautiful poem about Freeport and those recollections. A couple of people put it in chat. They were reeling in the ears. Reference to Steely Dan. Here and there, you know, that going back 50 years ago, and the options that you faced. I mean, anyone who was alive during that period remembers, you know, that lottery. So that was quite poignant. The American dream, you know, just the other side of the American dream, and treating our neighbors with respect is an interesting addition to the American dream. The good intentions with squirrels. You know, I have my own little poem about the squirrel, which begins with the little squirrel on the steps on the front lawn and ends with me shooting him dead. So squirrels, yes, some in common there. The time at the diner. I mean, any kid who's ever hung out at a diner, you know, looking at it from the point of view of the entrepreneur running the diner, very, very interesting. What you had in your coffee, I can see why that's your wife's least favorite poem, and I think you all taste that. Being an adjunct at Suffolk, I can certainly identify with the guy walking down the hall with the scratch his crotch in one hand and Wested Civ in the other, and your wife training on the heavy bag as she went into retirement. Very, very and that beautiful, beautiful poem about Isabella playing the piano as well. And the death, you know, whoever thought of the last death, the dodo bird was on their mind at that time. That was beautiful. And eating a bowl of Cheerios. Any mother who's ever laid out clothes for their kids can imagine that. And all those ships drifting in the moonlight as a result of being untied. That was quite memorable. And that perfect moment, how the weather becomes an enemy, and that beautiful, beautiful end of that walk with your father. And you know, sometimes the most important expression of love between a parent and their child is walks and other means of communication. So we thank you. That was just a wonderful, wonderful reading. So we're going to change gears now, and we'll bring it back, Bruce, for an encore. So here is the criteria for the open read. Remember, I'm going to call the names in chat. So if you didn't put your name in chat and you want to read, go right ahead, and we'll add you to the list. Please only keep your microphone muted until it's your turn to read. There's somebody with their microphone on. I don't know who it is. I'm going to have to go in and turn it off. So keep your microphone muted until you're called upon to read. Kathy will close the program. I will call the people who are scheduled to read in groups of 3. And our leadoff hitter remains to be Marvin. So the first group of 3 is Marvin, followed by Claude, followed by Sherry. And again, not to sound like a broken record here, but please keep your microphones off until it is your time to read. Okay, Marvin, over to you. Marvin, you got to turn your mic on. You're still muted. Give Marvin a second.
Okay, okay. Could you hear me?
Perfect.
Good. Okay, this is Midshipmite. I want you, the teacher said, for the midshipmite in Pinafore. You're the smallest boy in school. You'll do for Pinafore. I can't sing, I said. I can't even hum a lick. You could stand, she said, and open your mouth like a fish. They won't know you can't sing, and we'll teach you what to do. We want you for your height. Just don't grow the next few weeks. Rehearsals start tomorrow after school. See you then, midshipmite. You could do it, my mother said. You played Tiny Tim in 3rd grade. It will look good for college when you apply, Dad said. You were finest, Tiny Tim, hurrah, hurrah. God bless us, everyone. Wear this jacket and straw hat, Miss School, the teacher said. Stand between Gordon and Bruce. They're the tallest in the school, so you'll seem even smaller. You'll look even mightier, she laughed. My friends play ball at 4. I'll miss the games, Miss Gould, but you're just right for the midshipmite. There's no one as small as you. You'll have plenty of time for ball. Without you, Pinafore sinks, she laughed. Now raise the flag. That's your job after we sail the ocean blue. Step back, give a salute, and make it snappy. Fall back in line, no, between Gordon and Bruce. Yes, always there. And like a fish, move your mouth. Sing, I mean, don't sing. Hooray, bravo, great show. You were the cutest, you were grand, Mom said. I didn't know you could sing, Dad laughed and winked and laughed. First Tiny Tim and now this. We've got a Mickey Rooney here. Don't grow, boy, not another inch. We'll get an agent, and soon you'll be on your way to Hollywood. People around us were talking, Mom said. Look at that little one. Is he really in high school? Ah, come on, they borrowed him from Franklin Elementary. Yes, they did. But everyone is calling me midshipmite in class, at lunch, in study hall, even when I'm playing ball in gym. Hey, midshipmite, throw it here. Where's your straw hat and your pinafore? I'm branded for life by my height. Midshipmite, I'll always be. Dad, Mom, it isn't fair. When will I grow already? Who has to grow? You have it made. Movies, television, the Broadway stage. There'll always be parts for you, said Dad. But Dad, we love you just the way you are, said Mom. Just the way you are.
Wonderful, Marvin. Wonderful. Claude, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Great reading, Bruce. To follow just the idea about your refugee poem to start everything off, Kathy, I wrote a couple of poems this morning. I'm not going to read them though. One was called Gaza Riviera, and the other one was called Art at the Pentagon. That's what they're going to do. But in honor of Black History Month, this is a poem called Global Warming Blues. It was written in 1973, and it's in this great hip-hop collection called The Breakbeat Poets. So anybody want to get a good book of poetry, this is it. Global Warming Blues by Maria Hadessa Ekere Tali. The ocean had a laugh when it saw the shore. I said the ocean had a big, big laugh when it saw the shore. It pranced on up the boardwalk and pummeled my front door. There's no talking to the water, full of strength and salt. No, there's no bargaining with water, so full of strength and salt. I'm a mama working 2 jobs. Global warming ain't my fault. I said, please, water, I recycle. Got a garden full of greens. I said, look at here, I compost. Got a garden full of green. Water say, big men drill and oil spill. We both know what that means. Now my town is just a river. Bodies floating, water's high. My town is just a river, but I'm too damn mad to cry. Seem like for big men's living, little folks have got to die. Seems like for big men's living, little folks have got to die.
Thank you, Claude. Well done. Okay, Sherry, over to you.
Morning. Thank you, Dan and Kathy, for hosting, and Bruce for your like mosaic of art. I so enjoyed it. And I always love hearing everybody's open read. I'm going to read a poem from the latest Nassau County Poet Laureate Society book. It's called And Nature Hums Carry On. What is belonging, really? Do any of us feel assured in the nakedness of being true? This blue sky with its etched white billows floating their messages to guide hearts through aches before a winter frost threatens tender toes from dipping into river ice unknowns, where vulnerability is as translucent as dragonfly wings. And yet a crisp air inhale, and maybe an urge to twirl under soft falling snow, hearing the faint hums birds, trees, and seas cast, invites healing in this connected web of presence. And without meaning to, nature melodies play on, despite the busyness of our day, bringing peace and love colors to where the sky reminds possibilities are ever waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, I had Sherry down twice, so the next is a group of two. So we have Randy followed by Nicola. So Randy, over to you. Randy, you got to put your mic on. There you go.
This is written on Black History Month and just also a lot of the political divisions. It's a Trinitay, 36 lines, so I call it 36 lines of peace. The depth and fullness of shalom is like a quiet creek within, conveying stillness to the soul where humility of heart begins. For as we surge with peace inside, we raise the world on serenity's tide. It's like a quiet creek within, enabling us to wish others well, receiving strangers as new friends and blessing foes, not cursing hell. One's rage amounts to human waste. A peace-filled heart hasn't room for hate. Conveying stillness to the soul, as water rests, a mirror appears, revealing flaws and faulty goals, which flush downstream through growth and tears. Releasing rights to seek rapport unlatches minds and opens doors. Where humility of heart begins, discussion becomes our spirit's food. We hunger to enact amends and seek out truth or certitude. Shalom craves discourse versus debate, a river of harmony cleansing hate. For as we surge with peace inside, we're likely to listen rather than teach, to thirst for bonds, not taking sides, nor the gospel we're trying to preach. The calm that roots within our hearts becomes a fountain to people at large. We raise the world on serenity's tide by hearing our higher power within, washing away our selfish pride before maturing our spirit therein. No leader or kingdom will defeat a culture of peace that begins with me. Poem.
Well done, Randy. And when you mentioned shalom and I reflected on the poem, it sounded like you had written the song. So well done. Nicola, over to you.
There we go. Can everyone hear me?
Perfectly.
Good. Right. I love that last one, by the way. Thank you. This one is a fairly recent one of mine. It's called Lady of the Corn and Pomegranate. My love, he was a maker of songs, a weaver of dreams, well regarded in the country. A lawmaster, learned in the history of this land, welcome even in the High King's court. Green-mantled, we made our way to church, sunlight glinting on gold thread, thread woven at the neck of my own love's cloak. My hair unbound, crowned with a coronet of lilies, lilies white as unblemished snow. The priest met us at the church door, as was seemly, and there our kin bore witness to our marriage vows. We held our wedding feast upon the green, smells of fresh bread and roasting meats mingling in the noonday heat, tables laden with ripe cheese and fruit, with saffron cakes baked in the king's own kitchen, all washed down with good ale and wine. We feasted well. Later, we danced to music of the harp and pipe, in joyful celebration of our life and love. As evening fell, black-robed matriarchs settled fretful children, crooning ancient lullabies, until the moon, full-bellied, rose above the hills, its light reflected on the silent lake, a shining path to guide us to a hallowed place. Then did we leave to keep our tryst with older gods. The stones cast sharp shadows on the ground, silver in the moonlight. We came with reverence and awe. We brought a flask of honeyed wine, precious essence of this summer land, used rarely, save in honour of a new-made bard, or touched to infant lips to bless a birth, or else laced with poppy to ease a wise one's passing. Entering the circle, we made our offering, pouring a libation to our Mother Earth, seeking an older blessing on our love. Then my lord he turned and said to me, "Wear no more the lily garland, my lady of the corn and pomegranate." Extravagant words even from a bard, for I had never seen a pomegranate, though my lord had, feasting in the High King's hall. We left the stones at dawn's first light, arms entwined, our hair and clothes damp with dew, and on the altar stone a coronet of lilies laid, stained red by the newly risen sun. There you go.
Thank you, Nicola. Well done. Thank you for bringing us to your wedding. Okay, the next group of three is Maggie, followed by Robert Savino, followed by Dan Kerr. So Maggie, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Bruce, I just love your poetry. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Dan. This poem was written for Hiram LaRue's ex-Hunger project. It's called I Was a Lucky One. My mother cooked naively, tuna casseroles, pigs in blankets, meatloaf. Once I moved to the city, I mocked her skill to take a perfectly good roast beef and turn it into a small black rock. My parents worked hard to feed us. They offered love, support, education, and countless meals. I would trade the organic vegetables and cereals I am privileged to eat to spend an hour chewing my mother's Sunday roast. Food was available, plentiful, enough to fill a stomach, healthy enough to grow me. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Well done. Robert, over to you.
Hey, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Kathy. Bruce, always enjoyable to hear you. A great mix of mindfulness. Purgatory. There were tears on the ground that morning, not there the night before. They soaked up sins from the underworld that turned the bottom of my feet black. It was said to be a night walk for mourners to search for souls taken from life too soon, where darkness deepens and sunlight fails to follow. I've been on that path before while my heart was still beating, not knowing why I was summoned, why I saw shadows on an empty street, why I heard moans of suffering spirits. It's you in my dream. It's me in your imagination. I am beyond the grief that surrounds you, helpless. There were secrets untold. There were stories unholy. It's only God who is everywhere, who listens to prayers for forgiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Question just came in on chat. Is it still space to read? Yes, put your name in there. Philip, I got your name. Anyone else who wants to read, just remember to put your name in chat. So this next poem, I asked the indulgence of Robert Savino and Kathy Donnelly because they both heard it before. But it's I'm dedicate this poem to Bruce and Linda, who are both with us today and both hail from the village of my youth, Northport. So this poem takes us back to Northport from 1962 up until about 1971. And it's called Jack Kerouac and the Nuns of Northport. Northport of the 1960s had Gunther's Bar and St. Philip Neri Church and School. From his bar stool at Gunther's, Jack Kerouac guided the beatniks. From their perch overlooking Northport Village, the nuns of St. Philip guided me. Bob Dylan sang "The Times They Are A-Changin'," and they did, for the nuns, for me, for the Catholic Church, and for the country and for the world. The nuns got me at 6. I arrived wearing a big white tag with my name, phone number, and address. The kids were all in uniform, and the nuns were all dressed as penguins. When Mother Superior blew her whistle in Northport, Pope John opened Vatican II in Rome. As I learned to hide under my desk to avoid nuclear bombs, Rachel Carson published Silent Spring. The Mass was in Latin, and I learned about purgatory and about hell. Martin Luther King shared his dream, and many dreams died in Dallas. Pope John declared the Jews did not kill Christ, and I received my first communion. The Beatles invaded the US, and Nelson Mandela was banished to Robben Island. The Mass changed from Latin to English, and the priest began to face the congregation. Miniskirts first appeared, and Malcolm X disappeared. I received my first communion, and Vatican II said we should start reading the Bible. Mao launched the Cultural Revolution, and Star Trek went boldly before where no man had ever gone before. I discovered girls and an occasional tightness in my pants. Christian Barnard transplanted a human heart and put a stake in the heart of the Arab world. I became an altar boy, and my brother volunteered to fight in Vietnam. Martin Luther King was killed in Memphis, and the Tet Offensive killed the US in Vietnam. Russian tanks rolled into Czechoslovakia, and the Russians crushed the Prague Spring. I heard a nun curse the day Nixon was declared the winner over Humphrey. Some nuns changed their habits, showed their hair, and began using their names that their parents had given them. Many of the older nuns remained the same. As the country divided, so did the nuns. I discovered booze and dreamed of one day going to Gunther's. Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, and Teddy Kennedy drowned both Mary Jo and the dream of another President Kennedy. I discovered Che Guevara, Jerry Rubin, Saul Alinsky, and Arlo Guthrie, and my brother was dragged to Vietnam for a second tour. On the religion midterm exam, I explained how Joe Namath was like Christ, and the New Testament New York Jets defeated the Old Testament Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. Hare signaled the age of Aquarius, and Jack Kerouac died. Before he died, he declared, I'm not a beatnik. I'm a Catholic. In 8th grade, we celebrated the first Earth Day, and the loud guns of Kent State killed the 1960s. The day after the shooting, we gathered in prayer at the beginning of math class. Sister Eleanor was one of those nuns that kept her old habit, and she never changed her name. She asked if we had any prayers or intentions, and I raised my hand. For the young students gunned down by the fascist National Guard, we prayed to the Lord. After we all said amen, Sister Eleanor responded, for the brave National Guardsmen defending the country against the evil of communism, we prayed to the Lord. And again, we all said amen. Bob Dylan was right. The times, they were a-changing. The 1960s changed me, the nuns, the Catholic Church, the country, and the world. More than 50 years gone by, I thank the nuns of Northport for guiding me through these changes. I often hear their voices in my head and my heart, especially when I step into Gunther's for a beer. If you close your eyes and listen carefully, you may still hear Jack Kerouac's voice at Gunther's as well. He shared Northport with the nuns of St. Philip's in the 1960s. Thank you. Okay, so now we are Dr. Bronson, Hiram, and Linda. So Dr. Bronson, over to you.
Well, Bruce, thank you so much for a wonderful reading, just a great collection of poems. So actually, this poem is sort of follow-up with a prior one. It just came to mind with what's happening politically. San Antonio summer 64, the summer job at Brooks Air Force Base, where men tested their metal in decompression chambers and centrifuges in sleds fired on railroad tracks. It housed me, a med student, wanting to enroll in the race to the moon with docs from the heartland, flight surgeons entering active duty. But I, who'd wished to work with astronauts instead, assigned to a SAC bomber crew immersed in water, measure lean body mass, wondered what difference a paunch and a pilot would make seeing the B-52. Silent, eyes hidden behind red goggles, they swaggered in their muscled nakedness into my lab. Dark adapted to their cockpits, ready day or night, airborne at the president's command. Fly over the pole, drop hydrogen bombs, mutual assured destruction. MAD, it was called. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Bronson. Hiram, over to you.
Thanks, Dan. This piece is about a wintertime love. It first appeared in Draish. It's titled Hip, Kinda. Ice barely dripped back then when our love was frozen dinners, and our lips were blue with wanting. There were so many rattling windows everywhere, and even socks were raw and windy those days, with no heat but joy. Yes, years ago, hills seemed patched together with muddy snow, and our luck ran off with the bare white sky to somewhere. And the sun, well, it belonged to anything hungry. The milk was as cold as a sting. During those times when love was chipped china, our young limbs barely breathed like frost for each other. And of course, we didn't know at all. No, we didn't even suspect in those blizzardy days or nights that years later we'd want to shiver under blankets once again. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Hiram. Okay. Linda, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Bruce, I just want to say what a joy it was to hear the body of your work instead of, how we do at readings, we only get to hear one poem, maybe two. Your work is just gorgeous. So thank you. And I want to also say thank you to Kathy and to Dan. And I have one announcement, and keep us in your thoughts, please. We have just lost our venue at Northport Presbyterian Church. They want to charge us $50 an hour, which would average $150 to $200 a month, which we just don't have. So I've got some inquiries into 3 other places, and I'm just waiting to hear. We'll be on Zoom no matter what, but I'm just letting you know.
Linda, could you please, not to interrupt you, but could you please follow up with me afterwards? Because I've got an idea for you I'd like to discuss with you. I don't want to discuss it now, but I got an idea on another venue in Northport that might work out well.
Okay, so my poem is called Even the Water Whispered for the working folks in Stonington, Maine. Gulls rising up like catkins on the draft of a thermal wind. Pickups roll silent on patrol, not a radio wave, a haddock shoal. Fishing boats on rippled lawns. These working folks are up pre-dawn. Waders' caps and lobster traps, knee boots sealing up the gaps. Their deeply tan and sea-worn skin among the locals fitting in, these fishermen's off-season charm. Their embrace reserved and warm. A dearth of masts, but not of floats. Cushioned were these lobster boats, the lobstermen and women all attentive to Foghorn's lonely call. Down at Stonecutter's kitchen, they grab breakfast Sammy's on their way. This galley feeds the folks that fish, up early to meet hunger's wish. A friendly greeting, a door held long, added to the welcome song. Caffeinated, salty smiles, the signature of this Maine Isle. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, the next group of 3 is James Horn, our friend from North Carolina, then Virginia from Shelter Island, and then Bob H. So James, over to you. James, you got to turn your mic on. We'll give James a second, and then if James doesn't come on, I have his poem, which I'll read for him. James? Okay, James, I'm going to read it for you. James's haiku is called Remain. When things would remain, always did go down the drain. Had been rain in Spain. When much noise bells bang, we could see them where they hang. Heard them when they sang. Thank you. Thank you, James. Okay, Virginia, over to you.
Yes, hi. This poem is called Home, and it's for at least one of those released from Hamas. I am home, they say. I am filled with joy. I leap into my aunt's arms, but my wound suppurates. This wound is not visible. I look well fed and calm. No gangrene stench, only I pull away from my body. Home? Do I have one? My friends were gunned down. I was dragged into servitude for more than a year, no forgetting. I know my aunt's house, and my cousins hold me tight. They cannot put their fingers into my full body wound. Only I know I am never safe. How to resume living as I did staggers me. I face the mirror. Who is there? I only see the wound.
Thank you, Virginia. Very, very timely, beautiful. Okay, Bob, over to you. Bob H.
Thank you. Thanks, Kathleen, Daniel, and Bruce, and everybody. Long title. Not even a month has passed. It feels like eons. Oh, how the times are changing. They say up is now down. They say right, of course, is wrong. They say unity creates division. They say no more dialogue. They just rant. I say where will we end up? Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Very timely. Okay, Marguerite, followed by Jerry, and then followed by Shu.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad I was able to get on today. I had some technical difficulties, but I'm here. And I'm glad I got to hear you, Bruce. All right, so Valentine's Day is coming up, so I figured I would read a love poem, which I never normally write love poems, but I have one today. Love letter to a classmate. My classmate Frankie, how deep I fell inside my silent crush. That flame I held for you, how I missed the possibility of you, how I wished on chance encounters, ones long after high school. How every day I carry on in the busyness of life, life without you inside. There you are every day, inside the reminders, ones that force me to pause, breathe you in memory. How I was never prepared to read your untimely news, never ready to let you go, gone without saying my last goodbye. Felt inside me is every regret, stealing my meant-to-be moments away. They line inside my heart where I carry you, counting tomorrows, missing you in yesterdays, forever reminded how nothing is ever promised. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marguerite. Okay, Jerry, over to you.
Hey, this has just been a wonderful experience for me. Thank you so much, Kathy, for introducing this to me. And the poetry today has been really wonderful. And this is my offering for today. It's called Word Caravan. The word caravan comes to meet me at all hours of night and day, shifting the focus of conversations, the wordplay of day, the course of impeachment, the letter of the law, at the turn of which century, at which decade the caravan moves for some struggling for truth, for others to save the unborn in the balance of the living, always searching for the seat of God as the caravan moves through the desert, never escaping the mirage before them.
Thank you, Jerry. Well done. And we look forward to your reading next month.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Shu, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry that I'm late today. I post my poem on the chat so you can read along. The title is Yesterday's River. Yesterday's river passes today's bank, whispers of motion etched in the sand. Last night's raindrops sit on lily leaves, silver-lit memories that morning believes. The old melody lingering in my ears, a song of echoes of lost and near. This heart beats the same old beat, a rhymes of time too tired to repeat. Yet the hand once holding so tight now has nowhere to find in the night. Oh, my love, like water you fade, a shadow, a song, a name left unsaid. The moment we shared can only be found drifting in dreams where you are still around. Still the river, still the rain, carrying whispers again and again. Thank you.
Thank you, Shu. That was beautiful. Okay, so the last name we had in chat, this doesn't mean, don't worry, we'll get to you. This doesn't mean the last reading. But the last reading we had in chat was Philip. So Philip, over to you.
Thanks. Hey, Bruce, great to hear you and great to see and hear so many people who I know from the past. I'm going to be reading a version of a poem that Bruce has critiqued and I have not yet completed, so it's a little messy. If I stumble, that's why. An old man's pears and a bad kid. Inside me, a child suddenly remembers, and again I am a thief in the grass, tiptoeing through the electricity of bees, toward the fragrant hips of dangling Bartletts. Scanning the windows of that yellow house, keeping an eye out for Mr. Brockhoff, I crouch across his yard, reach up and pluck, until I hear that screen door snap. Coughing and lofting a broom like a spear, he charges feebly down the steps, his hair a shredded white flag on a bright pink hill. Crying laughter as I run, I skid on a patch of mush and fall, sending up a heavy confetti and landing flat on my back out of breath. And then he's above me, blocking the sun, a wheezing skeleton with a greenish grin, still blinking as the last pair thuds, I say, "It was very nice to see you in church today." Think, I suggest, just think. What would Jesus do? He raises the broom like a stake over Dracula and drives the hard round end at my sternum. But I flip to one side, so he stabs the ground, which gives me time as he staggers for balance to scoop up my loot and leap his fence. Safe again, I tell my favorite neighbor, then bite into a pear and give him a bow. Thank you.
Well done, Philip. Okay. Okay, we got an addition, Don Billings. Don, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. This is two very short poems. These are from the Out the Window poems. I don't know if you can see out my window there. There's a pond, and years ago there was high bamboo. So there's two poems, and the one is called Morning Song. Many of my poems were written in the library looking out the window. This is called Morning Song. It was dark when I sat to write by the glow of the library's light. And after a while, a pure and warbling song made me turn and smile to see that it was dawn. And the other one is called Wind Dance. Through my window I see, there over the frozen pond, wind in the high bamboo, swaying, bending, a wind dance in silence. Long leaves fluttering, flashing, green and silver to the quiet music of the breeze. Then a stillness, a rest. A sudden crescendo whipping the canes, bending them so you'd think they'd snap. And still repose, they stand tall and erect, now moving in a new rhythm. They're tracing silent ovals in the air, over and over, silent ovals in the breeze. Then the flirting wind moves on, seeking new partners for her dance. The bamboo was 25 feet tall. And there's a rule in Huntington, you're not allowed to have bamboo. And we had to have it removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Okay, so I know Kathy normally likes to do a reading, but let's see, Kathy, if there's anyone else. If you like to read and you haven't read, just wave your hands. Kathy, I don't see any other hands, so over to you, if you'd like to read.
Okay, I'm still looking, but no, everyone feels, I think everyone's read. Geez.
A lot of readers today.
You know, I just want to make a few comments. Linda, you know, you're asking for 2 hours from a 30-day month and give or take a day. It's so hard to believe that a church would not want to fit you in somewhere, a different night, or it's hard to believe. But I would like you to see, obviously you know very well what we're doing right here, which is just have the Zoom part. So you can continue on Zoom as Dan so graciously, created the Zoom account, and find a location more at your leisure, I would think. Just a thought. You should never stop. That's the point. Never stop. And so Bruce, I can't say enough about your reading. I have your book and love your work. So it was easy to ask you to be one of our readers for sure. Thank you so much. I do have a poem, and I think I just want to point out as I read a situation which I imagined, of course, not being there, in Gaza, that I speak to collateral damage, which also happens on the Israeli side, just as a product of war and hate and control and bigotry, all the terrible things, that there's so much collateral damage. People not even interested in politics have no clue what's going on. 62 million people, they say, didn't vote in the last election. So what's that, So I hope, last thought is, I hope we are never collateral damage with all this goings on. So in Gaza, he sat there comfortably reading in his embroidered armchair, lamplight over his shoulder, directed to the page. Knowing the flow of electric and water were disrupted, buildings were being leveled, reduced to rubble, fellow Palestinians trapped, all in a distance far from his area, which housed hospital employees, professionals, members of government, a university. Surely, this was known, his area would be spared. Families extended to the third, sometimes fourth generation, as children came into the world like blessings, all sleeping, eating, praying together. His little girls came into his private spot, or so he thought it was, with feathers that they had found on the beach to tickle him under the nose. They giggled and wiggled around him for attention. He placed his bookmark, leaned forward, spread his arms like a hawk, made a great roar, just missing capturing them again and again. Their dancing with laughter turned to two serious faces. Looking to him, into his eyes, they stood perfectly still. In the next second, they were gone, made part of the rubble, with the house, the embroidered chair, his book, his lamplight, him. He left this world like a blessing, not to live a second without them, not to live with only their memory, a wound never to heal.
Thank you, Kathy. Very timely.
I think, and God help us.
Okay. Bruce, it's time to bring you back for your encore.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Kathy, again. This has been a great reading. I enjoyed it very much. I've got one last poem. It's called Borderland. And Phil, good to see you here. You mentioned that I've been helping you with some of your poems, and I would like to mention that Phil is my primary editor, my most valued advisor as far as poetry goes. And a close second to that is the Long Island Poetry Collective Workshop, which Richard moderates. So two very good sources of good feedback. This is called Borderland. There are no ghosts here in this small village where I have lately made my life. They are banished to a rarely visited landscape of the past. Shadow faces of family, teachers and schoolmates, old girlfriends and best friends, all loved, all gone, wandered out of this life or off to unknown forwarding addresses, Christmas cards that no longer need to be sent. Sometimes I search for those souls in the half-light of dawn, the dimly lit minutes before rising. Their memories have grown sweet, even the mean moments of sins given and received, forgiven or not. They matter now as details of stories we tell our children and ourselves, while we can still tell the difference between ourselves and ghosts. But sometimes it is better to drive to the old neighborhood and cruise at idling speed, with just the right music or no music at all, pausing here or there to drift over an easy boundary into a murky reservoir of loss, then to drift back and consider the uneasy border we will all cross soon enough. On this side, I put down words and try to assure myself the story matters, and try to unhinge the door that locks with forgetting. On this side, I love and cry again, and conjure up flawless moments, or faded regrets, or resentments grown comically absurd. No ghost just now. I am at the industry of life, calling it strange when it seems so, stopping by woods and fields to wander when there's time, finding comfort in darkness and light, small talk and silence. Mostly keeping my word, mostly aware that I will someday forget, and that I will someday shade the memories of others, mostly grateful for the privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Well done. Okay, Kathy, over to you for the announcement of the next featured poet.
So we have Jerry Kaplan. She's amongst us here, and she will read for us. I have to say, Jerry's poetry is just lovely, and it just feels enlightening and feel good words. I look very much forward to bringing her to you. Jerry is creating her first book of poetry, so we look forward to its publication. And we met in a workshop, which is where I heard her poetry, and that led to this invitation. So yeah, welcome Jerry Kaplan for next month. And once again, let me just say thank you, Bruce. This was an honor to have you. And I know Jerry and I will be talking about you for a little bit. So that's that. Thank you.
Kathy, with all the other thank yous, thank you for making this possible. Thank you for your getting it going. Thank you for you lining up the poets.
Yeah. But
amongst all the thank yous, thank you.
It's a very interdependent thing that you and I have here, Dan. And you know, many issues over the years, and you know, we know each other fairly well, I think, at this point. And you know, we're very interdependent, I would say, putting this venue together. And I think it's fabulous. Really, you've made my life easy. I don't know if I could do what you're doing. And yeah.
Okay. So that's great. I'm going to stop the recording now, and we'll have any unstructured, any conversation anyone wants to say. The mic is